Hey, it's BT with Tales from a Gemini. Today's guest is KP Anderson. KP Anderson has been a friend for over 25 years. And, you know, before social media was big, you know, I remember I left LA and I didn't hear from him. And now he's running Hollywood, literally. The guy is doing a great job. He's won an Emmy for Talk Soup. He's met the president. He's done and he's doing big things. But he's still KP when you talk to him, man. This is I love it when I see my friends have prospered in this business, and it was a great conversation. It was inside stuff, and some stuff you like, and hopefully if you're a comic watching this, you'll see that if you stay in the game long enough, good things happen. So enjoy my conversation with my good buddy, KP Anderson. Oh my God, I'm so happy. It never gets old, Wyatt. Every time I hear that, I just know it's about to go down. You know what I mean? It's about to get serious. 1, 2, 3, and hey, it's BT with Tales from a Gemini, and today, my God, it's going to be the greatest reunion ever. In the beginning, when I first went to LA, and I was, I had a little heat on me. I'm not a lot of heat, but just enough to, like you can go, ow, burn your hand on a Bunsen burner, right? It was me and this other comedian. His name was KP Anderson, and this guy was funny, and we were the same management group. And so we lost touch for a while. And then all of a sudden I'm watching my favorite sports talk show, the Dan Patrick Show. And he goes, blah, 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 KP Anderson. I go, what? I go, my KP? Turns out I look him up, and this guy now is running Hollywood. Between my former manager and this guy, they're literally running. You know, it's like, I feel like Matt Castle. You know, when he was with the New England Patriots? And they won a Super Bowl beforehand. Tom gets hurt, and they got the same team, but he's the reason they don't go. I feel like the Matt Castle of the group. You're running shit. Judy's running shit. And now, I'm stuck here in Indianapolis, man. How you doing, KP?
Well, first of all, if I were running Hollywood, I wouldn't have time to do this interview. Like Judy clearly does not have time for this. If I were in charge of fucking anything at all, I wouldn't have time to do this interview. Yeah.
Don't give me that shit, because you're who's who. I'm gonna tell my producer this, because you're gonna be all nice and humble, which is what you are, that Minnesota upbringing. But my producer, this guy, true story, Wyatt, this guy has been executive producer for Talk Soup, The Blind Date, The D.L. Hughley Show, Joel McHale Show, The Norm Macdonald Show, and The Wayne Brady Show. I was Wayne Brady before Wayne Brady. Take away the singing and the dancing. I was Wayne Brady before Wayne Brady. How come I didn't get a call?
That's really why we lost touch. I just started looking for you who could sing and dance, is what it was. I just kept, I was head writer of that one. I was not executive producer of that one, but I did get my one and only, and I want to say Emmy, but then like everybody I know texts I just get daytime on my text. So I got my one and only daytime Emmy on that one.
Dude, honestly, to the point now, it sounds like nothing, and I know it's, we're having fun, but to win an Emmy, how did that feel, bro? Because to me, I'm still a comic, all right? I'm still a comic. So to me, that looks like an unattainable goal. And dude, you're doing it. You got a fucking Emmy.
Yeah, well, okay. So and thank you. And it was so great to see you again. And I just realized how much of my hairline I was showing, and I don't have a sharp orange knit cap to cover up what's happening.
Exactly. That's how you look.
But, yeah, I like that hat, man. That's fucking nice.
Thank you,
can I curse on this? Are we?
Yes. Yeah, you're free will, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So winning the Emmy. So, okay. I was nominated for an Emmy for Politically Incorrect when I was writing on that with Bill Maher. And I was nominated for an Emmy for The Soup when I was executive producing and head writing The Soup. The Soup nomination was great. It was amazing. They're all great. It's all cool and it's all great and it's all wonderful. The Soup nomination was probably the best because it was a show that I was really at the core of, of the creativity around and at the core of how the whole show came together and everything that happened. And also when we lost to Zach Galifianakis and Barack Obama. So we didn't have to feel bad at all. Like Joel McHale and I were sitting, we were literally sitting in the theater, and neither of us had paid any attention to who we were up against. And so we get there and you get the program and we're sitting with our wives and all, our writers and producers and friends are all around. And we both look at the program and look at each other at the same time. We're like, oh shit, we're not winning this. Oh, wow, we're gonna go drink. Like, we're gonna go to the bar. We'll be back, honey. And it was just like, but it was so, because it was just like, oh, I know who's getting this one. Like, I'm not beating Barack Obama for an Emmy. And so we just kind of relaxed. And then Lisa Kudrow was presenting it. And it was like this double whammy where like we had this moment where like I was like reading the fine print and I was going, oh, it says we could tie. Like there's a way to tie. So maybe we'll tie and we'll get like an Emmy because like enough people said this was fine. Like maybe we'll do that. And so we were so like into that like maybe we'll tie. And then Lisa Kudrow came on stage and Joel turns to me and he goes, yeah, I don't see Lisa Kudrow giving me an Emmy tonight. I was like, me neither, it ain't happening. And so we were back to just relaxed again. But so that one was really big. Like politically incorrect, it was like I was there for 9 months and then Bill fired me and then he hired me back 3 months later. And then somewhere in there, and then he fired me again 9 months after that. But somewhere in there, we got an Emmy nomination, and that was a little bit like, well, I'm sort of like an asterisk in this. Like I wrote some jokes and whatnot, but there's a group of people who still work with him who really like all the accolades go to them. The Wayne Brady thing was interesting because I had actually left the show and gone on to Last Comic Standing, and that was interesting because daytime TV is not really, that was for his daytime talk show, and it's not really where I work well, like,
Why's that? Why?
like creatively, comedically. Well, because especially then I was much younger, and I still, like, as you probably remember from our time on the road, was I was a pretty dark comedian and would get pretty dirty and stuff like that. And I still at that point in time was kind of like still learning how to come out of that space, and that show was really good for me to learn how to be more broad and write for, among other things, an African-American host, to write for, to be in charge of a staff that's writing stuff that had to hit a different audience at a different level than what I've been doing all those years. And we got nominated. One of the writers on the show, Lee Farber, who went on with me he was with me on The Soup. He was with me on Blind Date. He's a great director now. Lee actually gave that episode, the opening of the show, the monologue was going to be Wayne recreating the Thriller video on stage with all of the beats on stage and picking a young woman out of the audience and taking the walk with her and all of the pieces that we could. It was like a Halloween special type of show. Nice. And it was incredible. And it was such a great thing. And, I played a hand in helping get that, they're all these trophies are about the collaboration between everybody too. I don't mean to say that it's not as good because I didn't get to do as much on the show. That's not really what I mean by it. It's more just the idea that with that particular episode, it was really like, Wayne's talent meets Lee's vision, and the reason why Lee's such a great, there were other pieces of the episode, but that's really what, got, I'm sure, the voters when they looked at the tape to go, holy shit, what is this now? Yeah. And so it was really cool. And we actually did tie The View that year for the Emmy, but when I won the Emmy, I was at my buddy Steve's house playing poker, and we had the daytime Emmys on in the background, and I had kind of forgotten that we got nominated. And so all of a sudden I hear the Wayne Brady show, and I look, and Lee and Robert Morton and Wayne and all the people that I worked with are like piling onto the stage. And the guys were like, hey, are you going to get an Emmy for this? And I was like, I think I am. And then because I didn't work, this is the Hollywood budget thing, because I didn't work for Buena Vista Television anymore doing the show, like there's no pomp and circumstance to it when you've left, when you've actually, like, I got done with my one season of it, and I'd been working with Jay Moore on a lot of stuff, and Jay wanted me to move on to Last Comic Standing, and Wayne, they'd changed executive producers, and so it looked like there wasn't going to be a head writer, and so I kind of took the hint and moved on to Last Comic. Yeah. So it was just sort of like oh wow, but my Emmy trophy came to me in a box sent regular postage by someone at Buena Vista who literally just like slapped fucking stamps on it. Like we had just had our daughter, and my wife got home and the baby's crying, and we go walking into the house, and there's this box sitting on the front step, and like we're like right below the mailbox. And I'm like, what the hell, what's that? And I pick it up and I see the Buena Vista and it's pretty heavy. And I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. And sure enough, they just fucking wrapped some cardboard around it and dropped it in a mailbox somewhere.
Regular mail.
Mail. Yep.
Holy
regular mail. This business is not for people who expect, like, it's so weird because we all have such huge, want and need for attention and ego and all that other stuff. And it's just so not cut out for us. It's so like,
but it had to be, was there a surreal moment, man? Because it's like, I look at it like still like, oh shit. And you're like, yeah, I'm playing poker. They're going to Emmy. And you keep on playing. Like, is there ever a moment where you go, fuck, I'm actually doing this shit? Like, or is this one of those things in life or another step? No,
it's kind of like, it's a little bit of both of that, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I remember years ago, like back when you and I were down at the Improv, whenever we weren't on the road, we were there, 6 nights a week, 7 nights a week. And I was sitting next to Bill Maher, having a drink with him. And I asked him the question. I was getting really frustrated. Like I think you and I were so like on that same track of like, I remember the Jacksonville Comedy Festival. You took first, I took second, and we were in Montreal at the same time. And all these things were we were both getting a lot of like that first wave of attention, but it was like not quite. And I wasn't a good enough actor, and I wasn't getting, I wasn't getting the parts that I would get put on a veil for a commercial. And I'd get, someone like Bill would tell me, yeah, the next time around you're getting the writing job, but if you want to do audience warm up. So I felt like I was like continually cresting something, but I just couldn't get to that next thing.
Yeah.
And I asked Bill, like point blank, I was like, so you've made it over, like, when does it happen? And, Bill's such a caustic motherfucker. I love him dearly, but he said this to me, and I think about it. It's like, there's so much I don't remember of my life, but I remember so distinctly him going, when it happens, KP, is when the phone rings and you find out you got the job, and you don't call your parents, and you're not taking everybody out for dinner, and there's not going to be a big party, and you just go, yeah, okay. And you get ready to go to work. And he goes, well, when you're ready to actually do the job, that's when it happens. And he goes, and you got to get over this a little bit. You got to get over this need for it to be that big thing, because he goes, like, that's the difference between the people who really make the pros and the people who don't. And I look at that, and with like the notable, I think that that's too cynical a point of view. Like, having now had the career that I've had, and being as fortunate as I've been to do some of the stuff that I've done, is I will tell you that there are days, like, we're selling our house right now because my daughter's off to college and it's time to downsize and everything. And this house is, like the thing that sometimes I stand in and go, holy shit, I'm from Cambridge, Minnesota. How did I get, this many square feet in Toluca Lake, California? Like, what? Yeah. Who, why? And like, that does come over me. I mean, I can also like sort of like see Bill's point of view, because I can answer the who and why too. I know when I got better at the things that I needed to get better at to be able to do the job at the level that I do it at, and not get overwhelmed by the moment. And
when was that? And like, when did you know? Like,
I think it all happened in different phases, So like I got really lucky by getting the Soup, as the Soup. So I'd done as a writer and supervising producer, head writer, whatever I'd been through. I had done politically Keenan Ivory Wayans show, then Politically Incorrect, then what was after PI was the X show for FX, where that was the one where I stopped being a staff writer and started being a producer, and also was the writer on the show. And it was like a late night talk show on FX. Like, Bert Kreischer came out of it, and Gary Valentine. And they hired me off of, when I left Politically Incorrect, Bill helped me get a job with the promo company that was doing the promos for PI, and they put me on the X show. And then Mark Cronin, the executive producer on the X show, saw how I would work with the talent shooting the promos, and he was like, you should be a producer for me. So he hired me on as a producer. I'm cutting the story short. I started as an associate producer and then got promoted, and then eventually became like the only writer / producer of solid episodes. And Mark was the one who kind of went, and he saw, like, I think because I'd stepped down from writer and was doing the promo thing, during that period, the way that I was talking and interacting with the talent, like they also weren't as famous as Bill, and nobody knew this show existed, and so I felt more relaxed. I felt like I was hanging with like you and my friends at the Improv and just shooting the shit with them. And all of a sudden, I got much better at directing things because I relaxed and I stopped worrying whether they were gonna not want to do what I suggested, and whether I would have to creatively negotiate with them, and all of those things sort of came on over time. And I got better and better through that show. And that show went on for 2 years. And then at the end, Mark, at the wrap party, Mark said to me, he was like, you're probably going to go back to the writer track and be a head writer on a couple of things. Now, he called it exactly as it happened. And he said, but you're a showrunner. He was like, that's who you are. He goes, you pick up all the stuff that's not getting done and you get it done in a way that doesn't make the person who was supposed to be doing it feel like you're trying to leapfrog them. You're just all about the production. You're all about how do you see, in a lot of different directions out on a stage. I think a lot of stand-up helped me with that, like being able to do crowd work and being able to, like deal with all of what we dealt with out on the road all those years.
Checks dropping, people talking, maybe a fight breaking out.
Yeah, well, my daughter's off at college now, but she's kind of a science whiz, and she had to give a speech when she was in high school at a thing, and she went and gave the speech, and a whole bunch of like older scientist people were there to hear her talk, and I picked her up. She didn't want me there because she hates it when we like go to those types of things, and I picked her up afterwards, and I go, how'd it go? And she goes, oh my God, it was fine. She goes, but I was supposed to talk for like 20 minutes, and 10 minutes in, like 8 people just walked into the room and they were talking, and I didn't know whether to restart or whether I should just keep going where I was. And I found my way back, and but it just made me so angry. And I'm driving the car, and I don't know why I said this. By the way, keep in mind, she's 17 years old at the time. But I just go, did anybody start shooting pool or yell, what's so funny about you, faggot? And she goes, and she goes, no. And I go, I'm sorry, you had a rough day.
She don't know what we went through, man.
I know.
I just remember, for some reason, when we were, like I said, a little heated or whatever, and Judy was the executive producer for the Jenny McCarthy show, and they wanted us to do the promo for the intro, and I was quarterback, and you sacked me. Remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
If you don't know, the Jenny McCarthy show, Jenny McCarthy was really big thing at the time, and she was one of the first of the hot chicks who was actually funny. Her personality was funny. So we're doing the promo for her show, and we were supposed to be playing flag football. And I go back for a pass, and Jenny's supposed to say hi to me. I'm like, oh my God. And KP comes and nails me, like he sacks me. And that was your thing. That was your claim to fame. And you didn't hold back, motherfucker.
No, I was like, this is the one chance for 5'10", 165-pound me to take my buffest friend down, and he's got to go. He's got to go down.
Yeah, you kept putting me down like, you son of a bitch. Like, you kept bringing it. You were like, come on. I mean, you were hyped, man. I was like, okay, bro. Okay.
Yeah, I was just like, this is amazing. This would never happen. Any other place in the world, this doesn't happen. But God, when you think about that show, by the way, that's an amazing, like, look at, so remember who was our little extras coordinator on that show? Who would, it was
Melissa
Jenny
McCarthy.
Yes, it was Jenny's little cousin, Melissa.
McCarthy was on that. Man, that show, we had the who's who and didn't even know it.
Yeah. Will Forte was a writer and in the cast. I mean, all like it's really weird how these things happen sometimes. Like, and I even think back to those X show days, getting back to the original question, is like those days, like right now, I do a lot of work. I'm not running a show at this exact moment, and I'm doing a lot of kind of consulting work on different things. And one of the people who I'm doing it with is this incredibly gifted producer who named Jenny Daly, who was my first, when I was hired as an associate producer. Jenny was a producer on the show, and I became her, her employee basically throughout the show. And Jenny was, and Jenny now runs this company called Critical Content, which is a massive. They do the Catfish series. They do just a whole bunch. I can't. The one thing I'm doing with them, I can't really talk about. But she's now, speaking of running Hollywood, she's someone who's done that. It's weird how you do those shows early on, and I think now a lot of people are finding it on like podcasts and YouTube things that like they're gonna see 20 years from now, 25 years from now, they're gonna be going, holy shit, those knuckleheads who I worked with all went on to some stuff.
Yeah, man. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It really, I mean, honestly, looking back on it, it's like, fuck, man, we were doing it. And you, like I said, you're really doing it. I just remember having that conversation with you at the Improv, and you were talking about Bill Maher, and I think you guys were in Aspen, or I think it was in Montreal or Aspen, and he goes, "Hey, buy me a drink." And you go, "Fuck you, you're making more money than me. You buy a drink." I
Yeah.
remember you saying that. I remember little conversations like that, man.
Yeah.
I remember the first time we met was in Lake Okoboji. I remember that shit. And I remember one of my favorite jokes you did, and it's so apropos for now when you were talking about I just remember the punchline was, yeah, all the Southern senators get drunk and go, "Blacks can't vote," and they're playing quarters and they're going, "If I win, blacks can't vote." Bink. And I just remember, and now I look at it and go, that's basically what they're trying to do now. And I go,
Yeah.
and I always think of your joke. I always think of your joke.
Isn't that crazy? Like so much of that stuff. And yeah, and back then we thought we were amplifying what was going on. You know, we thought that we were like, Deal and I talk about that all the time. That back in the, because, you know, I had a good base, thanks to Keenan, thanks to like DL. I had a good base of clubs and places that I could go work that were, you know, that were more African-American clubs and stuff. And where, you know, I was kind of welcomed because I was a little bit nuts, and because I don't know why, to be honest with you, I don't know why DL wanted me to produce this fucking show. Like I think DL just was like, he was so happy to have some guy who he could be like, hey, here's a rich white guy when we did that show, nobody watched it. It was on TV1, and now I think more people watch it. DL's doing it through Kevin Hart's company on Pluto and Peacock and stuff, and I think it's got a little bit better viewership. But it's DL's radio show, done like Howard Stern style with cameras in the booth. And we had so much fun. But DL would just love to. We'd talk in the morning before we got ready to do the show, and like we'd roll through the issues, and I'd make some joke. And he'd go, "I don't want to do that joke. You need to come on and do that joke." And I'd be like, "No, don't make me do that joke. I'm going to look so racist if I do that joke." And he would give me no quarter whatsoever. He'd just be like, "Here's the white guy who owns us, KP." Damn it. If anybody were watching this, I'd be canceled. Do you know that?
Well, how did you write for like, seriously, because you've written for African-American, like you said, Wayne Brady, whatever. How did you get into that? And how did you know, like, find that, you know, the vein of an African-American voice? How did you write that to make it not sound, you know, like, okay, this is probably too white, so I'm writing for a black guy, and I'm from white Minnesota. So how did you do that? How did you navigate through in those waters?
You know, I think that what worked for me in that space was I never tried to inhabit the voice at all. You know, like you look at the African-American comics who I've worked with, Wayne, especially that's a daytime TV show. And especially if you give it the era and everything else, it really is just calling it what it was. It really is just like was Disney working extra hard to make a talk show for white people with a black host, I think is how I put it best. And I don't think Wayne would really argue that point.
Yeah.
Wayne gets an incredibly unfair rap in that space sometimes. I love that he did that. After we worked together, he did that Chappelle piece, and I was so happy for him and happy with him that he did it, because it's just like, don't put that on him. Don't make him be the grout between cultures in this country. That's not fair.
Yeah.
He's just a funny fucking guy.
Yeah.
And he's a very talented guy. And Wayne's strength also wasn't, Wayne's strength was all improvisational. So how we learned to write for him and how we learned to build a monologue for him and do stuff sort of stayed away from having to, and because it was daytime, stayed away from having to make big points about anything. It was really more about kind of like where I went for, if he was just telling a story, it was more about where he and his wife went to dinner the night before and who they bumped into. We were kind of trying to model Regis Philbin at that point in time and just try to put it more inside of Wayne's voice. And Wayne's voice, just honestly wasn't particularly urban. So there's that. But then when you look at like the stuff I've done with DL or Kevin or Keenan was a learning curve in how to write for TV. And Keenan kind of basically traded me for a player to be named later to Bill after he hired me. It was literally like, Bill was like, I was going to hire him. And Keenan goes, well, he's not getting many jokes on my show. You want him? And Bill was like, yeah. But Keenan stayed really, really close and kind to me when we bump into each other. He's still an incredible guy. And, I think that Keenan, the way that I would answer the question is that I think, when you look at a Keenan, now here's a guy who's very different than Wayne. Wayne was still coming up and was still learning who he was and as an entertainer and was getting a lot really early.
Yeah.
Whereas Keenan was, Keenan had done In Living Color, and Keenan had done all those movies, and he was really, not just the head of the head of an empire, he was also the head of an entire family of funny people.
Yes.
And so Keenan really understood how to put people around him that could fortify the pieces that he needed them to fortify. So Keenan never looked at me and went, "Hey, can you do the whatever XYZ story about this?" He would go, "What can you pull out of the news, or what can you pull out of here or there?" And what I did learn from that moving forward through Wayne into Kevin Hart, into DL, into any other place where I've worked with, African American comics, is I try to write the joke a way that they can pick it up and craft it, because a lot of it's vernacular, right? A lot of it is just like figuring out, like, how do I put these in my words? So like with Kevin, as we were developing the Donald Mack character for this Lyft Legend, the hidden camera thing that we did for Lyft, that we did a couple seasons of, as Kevin and I were developing the character, like I would touch on more of the like the sort of the cranky old man from all walks of life type of things. And we talk about what his background was and what his history was. And then I'd leave it to Kevin to apply the parts that he was going to be able to make it sound more like him, like to take a race thing out of it, just to own it into his voice. And Kevin's another guy. He doesn't want a lot of jokes written for him. Kevin wants the idea floating in his head, and then he wants to craft it the way that he can.
Yeah. He's another one I don't think people give enough credit, because I think when they find out he has writers, for some reason I think people, he's not. And I'm like, you don't understand, man. I mean, everybody gets together and get an idea, but they're going to put it in their voice,
Yeah. And that's the things, like DL again is another perfect example of, like, DL's not a big, like make me read it off a teleprompter type of guy. DL is more, DL's just a cranky fucker. DL's just, I don't need you to write a fucking joke for me. I need you to tell me what the fuck you read in the news and what's so funny about it. Okay, goddamn.
Hey, but correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody said this, and I go, yes. And when it comes to like comedians telling the ability to tell a joke, like a joke, DL might be in the top 5 all time of just being able to fat off the joke. I mean, get that bam, bam, get to the point, bam, bam, jab, bam, bam. He might be in the top 5 all time as far as telling a joke with no fat on it.
Yeah, no, he is like, you go to watch him do stand up, and while I was doing the show with him, I went up to San Francisco once and hung out, and then I did a couple of shows in Irvine with him, and you're absolutely right. He's just, he's a killer, and he can go forever. He's like, for a man who drinks as much as he does, to be able to remember that much material at the drop of a hat is unreal. Like, he is so goddamn good at it.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, like, DL is also a bona fide genius when it comes to delivering a sadly not unique point of view, but one that is so not brought into mainstream media through anything other than hip hop. DL, raised in South Central, was very, had, his stepfather raised him. His father was in jail. All of the tropes that you hear about that stuff that, that are common to one part of society. He's got all of that, and very few people are listened to for what they think about what's going on in the world who come from that point of view.
Yes.
And DL, hasn't lost the sort of commonality with everybody who's from that place, but he's a genius. And so he really resonates. Like, he really, really resonates when he wants to talk about something and not necessarily be funny about it or make funny be a part of a larger point. And I think that's something that, sometimes it's hard, even for me, who's such a good friend of his and who's worked with him for so long. Sometimes it's hard for me to, like, even equate the person that I see on stage doing stand-up, because he's such a crisp, clean, like, hammer it out. You bought tickets for the laugh, so I'm not gonna lay my social views on you right now,
yes.
Unless they're hysterical. And then bring him over to the radio show, where he combines that with this fucking worldview that is, sorely needed.
Yes.
It's incredible. And he's also, he's not woke. He's not, he's not particularly, he's neither, nor is he sexist nor racist nor anything else. He's just like got like common sense oozing out of him.
He's just
And he's a
DL.
cranky old guy.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so,
he's just DL. I mean, like he says what's going on in the world, and it never gets preachy. It stays funny. Right when you think it's gonna go, here we go. He'll bam, 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 bam. He'll still like, okay, here we go. Here's the preachy part. He never gets preachy, but he still keeps it funny and keeps it going, and you laugh. I don't think people have enough time to process being offended because they're laughing at what he said, and which is, to me, the best trademark of any great comic. You can bring up the most controversial subject, but if you make people laugh who don't agree with it, that's when you know it's fun. I don't agree with half the things Bill Burr says, but they're funny.
Yeah.
And
well, and I mean, and that's the thing is like DL would, I think, and I could be wrong, it could be provably wrong. Maybe he made some comment on this, but I think no, and I haven't seen it, but I think knowing him, I think that he would defend Joe Rogan's right to show everybody exactly who Joe Rogan is. Like that's how he would put it, I think, is kind of like, and again, I don't really know the context of, I keep hearing comics talk about the context of whatever that montage of Joe doing that stuff was. And I just go, well, Jesus, though, there had to be like all of those opportunities. There had to be something else you could have been talking about at that moment, but you chose to do it. And I guess, yes, free speech is, sort of central to my values. So I go, I wouldn't ever want to do that myself, but I guess you have a right to do that. But boy, I think you have to accept that, if you don't want people to think one way about you, you're not giving them many other options, are you?
Yeah. I mean, I hear you exactly, but I'm the same way. It's like, okay, to me, my thing is, if you're gonna dig on somebody and keep digging and digging and digging, you're gonna find something. You're gonna find with everybody. I mean, no one walks with this motherfucker unscathed or without saying something that people go, "Hey, man, that guy or that girl is, this and that," or "Hey, man, that was 5-10 years ago. Maybe I've changed," And they're always gonna. How do you personally navigate through this? Your culture, especially you're in Hollywood, instead of out here. To me, I always say, that Me Too and Black Lives Matter, all that stuff, all the movements. I think it's more New York, LA entertainment, where I'm in the Midwest, and it's like, I mean, I don't think you're gonna get too many people getting Me Too'd at a Jiffy Lube. You know what I mean? Like,
I do think that so much of it is kind of a young man's game, or a young person's game. I should
young person gotta get their pronoun game right, bro.
Yeah. But I think that I actually deal with it two different ways. Because when I go on stage as a stand-up, I'm back doing a lot of stand-up right now.
Good.
And when I go on stage, I leave everything at the door. I leave all the, besides like jokes that are, about the age difference between my daughter and I, and the values difference between she and I on stuff, I don't tend to dive too directly into like, I don't really care to address Me Too or cancel culture, or what. I care to do the jokes that I wrote. And some of them are offensive for reasons people haven't figured out yet. And there's a lot of shit that I used to do that I would never bring back, because I know that like in this day and age, it would be the end of, and also there are places where I've changed. Like I used to do a joke way back when I heard it, like I was actually pretty fucking mortified. My daughter found some old recording of me online, and she listened to it and she was like, "Dad, this joke," like she goes, "a lot of it's still funny, but," she goes, "this one," and it was like around the Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding thing, and like I don't know what I thought was funny about it, but I was fucking brutal to Nancy Kerrigan, and really like that's the one where I'm just like, holy shit, did I actually say that more than once, enough times that somebody got it, recorded back in 1990 whatever, like holy shit. And it's there, and it's just like I can't, you can't take it back, but all you can do is just go, well, fuck, like good Lord, I think I've learned from them. But I do think that like when you look at a lot of like this incel culture and the and the angry young man and the fucking dudes with the torches and from IKEA and all that shit, like or Cost Plus, you go, God, I don't think I was that, but I do absolutely understand like the young man who could not handle the rejections he had faced after growing up with a lot handed to him,
Yeah.
and decided that everybody else was at fault. Like, I can't honestly look anybody in the eye and say I didn't live that experience, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to me personally, I just remember being at Lake Okoboji and like, who you working with? KP. Okay. I just remember going, this guy's kind of cocky, but you like him. I remember just going, this guy's cocky, but I said I like him. And I just remember, like, I think we stayed at condo I don't know where it was, like a house or whatever. And we always got along. I was like, this guy's good. I go, this guy's a good writer. He's good. He's so cocky, but he's good. And I think we, like, it was just like we always gotten along. We've always gotten along. But to me personally, and that was when, like, if anybody was what do we call it back in those days? Edgy, over there, edgy.
Yeah,
I mean, Bill Burr said it best. He goes, "They're gonna get a leather jacket on and go on stage and look, I'm edgy." You know what I mean? And I just remember being at the Jacksonville Comedy Festival, and we were doing I just remember it was in a little semicircle next to the river, and there was a Hooters there. And I remember you got into it with this. You got into it like, some high school girl or something. And you go, you just wait till you're wiping something off your back after some guy just did whatever. And I was like, holy shit, KP. And it was something it was in
the man a leather jacket. Yeah. He's edgy.
I just remember going, holy shit, KP. I was like, no. I just ran in the back going, no. And it was so
and by the way, I just can't, I still to this day, it took a while sort of off, but I was on stage and then came back, and I was on stage at this new club, the Comedy Chateau on Riverside, around Lancashire, rather, out in North Hollywood. That's kind of an unhinged, feels a little bit like back in the day sort of club where they're new to club ownership, and they haven't figured out how to keep any of the animals at bay just yet. So there was a guy on before me. Yeah, Saturday night there's a guy on before me, and he's new to comedy, and he's 55 years old, and he's also, it turns out, new to being gay. He found out mid-marriage, and so his whole act is about that, and he's doing a whole bunch of first time I sucked a dick kind of stuff, and all of this stuff, and some of it's funny, but he's also green. And so some of it's it's not it's not funny points, but it's sort of long written.
Right.
And then you add on top of that he's talking about some stuff that, a chunk of the audience is probably going to be a little uncomfortable with.
Right.
And so of course there's one guy in the audience who just starts booing him, just boo, boo, boo. And he just and that's all he's saying is boo. And so finally the guy gets off stage and I'm up next. Yeah. And I just lit into the heckler, and I was just I kind of went to sort of a whiteout space of I'm going to beat the shit out of this person with my words. And that's all that, and I literally was just and my wife was there, and she's like, wow, you're kind of a, she goes, I remember that guy. I was just I don't know. I was you and I have nothing in common. He said something come on, you're straight. And I was let's be perfectly, you and I have nothing in common. I was I would never put on that fucking shirt. And by the way, I think only one of us has swallowed trucker semen for lunch money, and it wasn't me, you motherfucker. And I was just pounding away on this fucking guy.
This is the old KP I remember.
Yeah. So that guy still shows up from places. But then back to that DL point of putting your life in two worlds kind of and being something else. Very sincerely and very much meaning it. When I start a show as a showrunner, the very first day that we get together, and because the DL show is a perfect example where I've got a staff that is very, very majority African American, and then a few white people, and then a few an Indian guy. We had all kinds of people, everybody's hyper aware, and nobody working for me is anywhere near as old as me, it feels like these days. And so you're dealing with people who are coming in with, a lot of opinion and a lot of expectation and not a lot of real world experience. And you've got to try to figure out how to help them understand. Well, first of all, you got to create an environment where everybody can do the best job.
Yes,
that they need to do. And that is really nowadays, it really is combining a sensitivity and an understanding of what these expectations are of who we're supposed to be in the workplace. And there's a lot of it that I find actually really good. I find it sort of sterilizing. Yeah. That's we don't we have a job to do collectively here. And when we're doing that job collectively, we need to figure out how to be, we need to figure out how to be good collaborators on it. And maybe if that leads to friendships, then fantastic. But also, people much more so than when I was starting out, don't view their jobs in Hollywood as the only thing they're here for. Like I come from an era and a culture where you really, like, when you start working in that system, you are just, it is your life, and it's all you care about. Your family doesn't understand you when you go home, because you only talk about the shit that's going on in these shows, that they don't care at all what the backstage stuff is, and everything else, and everybody's there for long hours, and of course people hook up, and of course people go out and get drunk together, and of course someone says the wrong thing, and it's all settled in house, and that's how it used to be. And it wasn't necessarily healthy. It wasn't necessarily a good way to live. It wasn't necessarily a good way to be to raise a family, to like come home from that, and so it wasn't good for anybody. And now it's a much more, because of these things that are getting talked about finally. It's crucible enough to be young and broke in a really expensive city and trying to live a dream, and being taught daily that you're insignificant in a thing that you worked your ass off to get an ability, to get a right to do. And so I kind of thought about it a lot over the last few years. And so when I started, like, the last few shows, when I get the crew together for the first day to kind of talk down what we're going to do, here's how the project's going to work and everything, I always cap it off with, like, the word respect. In a lot of these situations, everybody talks about respect, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't get respect, and but respect is such a loaded word. It's such a, a lot of people, especially younger people, tend to use it as a reason to get their gander up and to fight. You're not respecting me, or I don't respect you, or that kind of stuff. And I said, so let's put respect to the side for a second. Like, respect, everybody's got a different version of what respect means, and how do you earn it, and where do you get there. I want to put a word that's a lot simpler in front of everybody: regard. Regard is super easy. If you have regard for everybody else, if all you care about as it applies to everybody else is, I don't want to be the reason someone else has a shitty day, then you can probably navigate all of this. Like, and it doesn't, it doesn't mean that we're not going to have sexual harassment training. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get a code of conduct book that we all have to read and sign. But if you want one simple rule that I think actually works for everybody, it's show people the regard, the right to not have a fucked up life because of you. It's a really simple thing, and it's kind of caught on a little bit. I've got a couple other friends who are showrunners now who sort of give their version of the same speech, and I'm getting a lot of feedback from younger people that is like that they actually really like it too, because it sort of cuts through. They're also, not everybody is the same level of woke, or whatever you want to call it. My daughter and her friends at college at Northeastern, she's got an incredibly diverse group of friends, and they, would tell you that they would rather be watching Chappelle and John Mulaney and old great comics with their free time. And when you look at the shows and the comedies that they like, they're not seeking in their comedy sterilization.
Right.
They're comfortable with the idea that there can be friction between classes and races and lifestyles and everything else. And they also are comfortable with the idea that sometimes that leads to a laugh on the way to an understanding.
Yes. My God, that's beautiful, man. No, I love that, because when you say regard, it takes away, and like you said, respect in a way, man. It's kind of like, if they're younger and somebody like us says it, like, that's old people talk. I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, what the fuck? I hate when people say that's old people talk. I'm like, man, fuck off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I really don't want to say, man, fuck off. But old people talk. I can take you in anything in life. Yeah. But but you have to listen to them.
You know why old guys like us never use the word respect is because we fucking know no one has it for us.
That is so true.
Like, you think I walk in the house and my wife and daughter go, well, here comes daytime Emmy Award winner.
Hey, you talking about put in. Well, I gotta listen to my producer's 20, so I listen to him on a lot of stuff. And the funny thing about it is, and I give this to him all the time, I go, he doesn't know who Pearl Jam is. He's never heard of Pearl Jam.
Fuck him, then. No, I'm kidding.
He does. He doesn't know who Pearl Jam. I'm like, are you? I mean, the first time he told me that, I go, no, and he said no, and I was just, I was like 5 minutes. I was like, are you fucking serious? So I screenshotted Pearl Jam, came on my Sirius Radio. I screenshotted it and sent it to him. And he's like, oh. yes. No clue, man. So that's beautiful, bro. I think the meshing, it's like, I like to think I'm open-minded, this and that, but I love it when you meet people who are like on the up, have that progressive thought, but you meet and you think you're progressive, you meet somebody really, and you go, okay, and it kind of meshes into a beautiful
Yeah.
sense of just like, okay, you know that if I said something that's fucked up, I don't mean it, and it's coming from a bad place. It's just that,
Yeah.
growing up and then trying to get away from that kind of thing, but it's gonna happen. It's
Yeah.
going to happen. I'm going to say something. If I say a wrong pronoun, I'm not doing it to be a dick. It's just say, hey, I grew up,
Yeah.
and you say him, her, him, or whatever. And I'm not saying to be a dick, but I don't think if I say the wrong pronoun, you should go into a fucking tizzy.
Yeah, no, and I think that, here's the other side is like someone else say, I think it was Alonzo Bowden or Chris Hardwick, one of the two. I don't know why those two are the two because they're so alike. But in one of these conversations about stuff, and we were talking about Twitter, and I don't get on Twitter very often. I tend to, like, if I have a really big compliment to pay someone that I just feel like I want to know that they know I think that, I'll throw it out there. But I try to stay off of there for a billion different reasons. But there's like, it's such a narrow hallway that gets amplified so loudly. Yeah. That, like, and it's kind of like what you said about Indianapolis, is most of the people out there are not getting thrown into a tizzy because you said the wrong pronoun. It's just that the people who have such a megaphone right now because of social media and because of their willingness to, like, dive in and be insanely offended and all the other stuff. And it's like, I'm always torn because I genuinely don't want to discount their opinion. I don't want to, because I don't know, like, let's take the LGBTQ and the trans stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I know one person in my life who's trans, and a friend who came out in the middle of a marriage, and then realized it went further than that, and then went through the stuff and is trans. And I'm so bad at talking, like, I don't even know how the right way to say how that all went. But she's an insanely nice person, really talented voiceover artist, and super open about the experience, but also is not a trans person who is walking angrily through the world about mistreatment. And maybe that's because it happened so much later in life, mm-hmm. and because it didn't have the struggle of the young person in that position, where people are much more cruel and people are much more willing to or likely to engage. I mean, as you get older, you keep to yourself more, and so whatever you fucking think about it, you just kind of go, I don't know, the world's fucking that way. I'm getting out. Like, and so I don't have enough exposure or experience, and I don't know what it's like to wake up in the morning and not feel like exactly who I am.
Yes.
And
yes.
so I have sympathy and for it. I don't know that I have a lot of empathy for it, just because I haven't lived it. And so, but that doesn't mean that I've got ill will towards anybody in that capacity. And so, like, I go, look, if it's how you deal with Dave Chappelle saying something that you infer as an attack on you as a person, or as a community that is your central community, mm-hmm. like, I'm not going to say they don't have a right to be offended by Dave. I'm not going to say that Dave doesn't have a right to say it. I'm going to say this probably isn't my fight. Like, this probably isn't for me to regulate.
Okay, for me personally, I think that's punching down, because you can say what you want about Dave. He's a comedian. I mean, the one you should be worried about is Marjorie Taylor Greene, somebody in Congress who's saying some shit, because they're the ones who can really, really, really affect your life. They're the ones that can pass a law.
Yeah, they can actually change something that can all I kind of, like, with that particular material of Dave's, I do kind of go back to, like, he's got a whole bunch of other stuff I like a lot better than that material. Not because I'm offended by the material, but I just go, wow, you're spending a lot of time hanging out here. And now, knowing the full story and knowing about Dave's friend who was trans, and I do think that Dave's got there's a lot of truth to his larger point about a community that that comes angry and eats their own when they don't agree with them. And he has a right to point that out too. There's a part of me that goes, but can the fifth special be about something else?
Exactly. No, you nailed it there. I feel the same way. If you're such a brilliant comic, you can, how much more can you spend on that topic? I understand kind of now why you had to go back to it on this last one, because of what happened to his friend. But now, if you come up with another one, you're gonna have to go to a whole different place, I think. I mean, me personally, I feel that way. But I get it. But you don't have to be born that way. And it's like you said, we have the luxury of, hey, I know I've always liked women, and that was my downfall in LA. Should have been, instead of chasing, I should have been writing jokes at it. Anyway,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I knew my downfall. So I
Unlike
knew what
some
I've
of
always.
us, you were able to do something about it. Where's BT go? Oh, God damn it, I was looking at her.
Yeah, well, look at us now. Look at us now. You have a house and I have a roommate. So who who came out on top on that one? You know what I mean? I'm a grown ass man with a roommate. I got a room, and there's some rooms I can't go into because I'm too messy.
I would just masturbate, then focus.
Hey, after I do that, there's no more focus. It's more like, I'm tired now. I get to that point where if it's the last thing of the day, perfect, I can go to sleep. But if I do that early afternoon, it's like, there's going to be no writing now. You know what I mean? So I got to be focused, But yeah, but at the same time, I'm no born into what I like, whatever. But I can still look at, and it takes some people to get me to see this way, though. I never understood why women have to park underneath a light in a parking lot, or they want to try to park up front because there's crazies out there who attack them. I didn't realize that. Somebody brought that to my forefront. I go, oh shit, I didn't realize that. Or somebody like who's trans, who maybe they were born and they always felt they were something else. I don't know that luxury, but I'm gonna have empathy because I'm like, okay, I don't know what that's like. It's like somebody white going, I don't know what it's like to be black, but I do know that. Seeing all these people being shot, unarmed people getting shot, there has to be a problem. I mean, if other countries point that out to the United States, there's a goddamn problem. When Germany goes, hey, it's wrong to target a specific race of people, something's wrong. You know what I mean? So you don't have to be born like that to understand it's a problem.
Yeah, and I think you're very right about that. You're right, and that. Can I take back what I said at the top of this about it's not my fight? Because you're right, and that's not, and I phrased it poorly, because there is, if you've got a moral center, you've got an obligation to, acknowledge, defend a point, to do what, to do what you can, and you've got the right to free speech. You should stand up and speak your mind on stuff. And I think that that's another, by the way, that's another thing about my current industry that has gotten really hard, is that, it really is, these are big corporations that run these productions. And you see, like, the reason that I think you're seeing so much revenue getting into, like, in the podcast lane where there's really popular people, it's not because we're dividing intellectually down like one road or the other. I think that it's a very diverse, like, we've got some seriously stupid motherfuckers in this country. We got some seriously smart motherfuckers in this country, and we got all of the rest of us. And I think all of the rest of us cut along so many different lines with so many different thoughts and opinions about everything, and it's all based on, the context of what our lives have been. And so, like I feel like a good example that I feel like I've talked about some is that. When you talk about white privilege, like, does white privilege exist?
Yeah.
Yes. That's an easy answer. It's a very easy, how I know I can say it, I know that it exists, because if I say it, someone will go, oh, that was courageous. Then someone won't go, no, now you're just complaining. Like, they'll go, oh, you're
brave. You're brave.
Look what you did. Yeah. And but I think that what's interesting to me is I think that the message of the existence of white privilege is something that's spoken globally, but always heard locally, or almost always heard locally. So, like, by way of example, and if you say to me, KP, you're doing well in your career because of white privilege, or you have white privilege and you've had an easier run at this career than me. Internally, what I'm going to think about is the work that I've done to be where I'm at and what my particular path was. And all of a sudden, by the way, you didn't say that to me. I'm just using, it seems like we're good for an example here. But like, there's a likelihood that I'm going to hear it as you just saying that I've had it easy, as opposed to me looking at, at the layout of a life lived with certain, like, when you and I are driving out of Okoboji, if we both get pulled over, who's getting home faster? As opposed to thinking about that, I'm just going to go, fuck you, BT, you were out there. I fucking grounded out. I did. But it doesn't mean that it's not true that this set of circumstances also exists out in the world.
Yeah.
And that it has existed for a long time, and that we haven't gotten, regardless of improvements that have been made, we haven't really figured that out.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that like that discussion, because people get so hung up on semantics all the time, that discussion gets harder and harder to have because, and again, you talk about like the Marjorie Taylor Greens and you talk about politicians. I think on both sides, politicians really want to lean into whether it's defund the police, which is the stupidest fucking set of words anybody has ever come up with to get to a reasonable solution to a problem we all deal with.
Yeah.
Because like, what did you think everybody was going to say when you coined that phrase? Like, what did you think that everybody like reorganize the police? Well, you're literally like one word away from getting it fucking right, and instead you come up with the dumbest fucking word that you could land into conservative talking points for the next 20 fucking years.
You were one word away and you fucked it up.
Yeah, and so it's like, but it's because people love to do that. They love to sit and wait for someone to use the wrong pronoun. They love to sit and wait to use the, like to do that. It's like, it is, for lack of a better term, it is gotcha shit. And it's like, I woke up today and I'm going to fucking find somebody who disagrees with me and I'm going to put them under. And
I feel like they're waiting like this. And okay, I'm offended. Like they're looking like this, and he said the wrong pronoun. Or I mean, I feel that sometimes people come to comedy clubs like that. Like they might be either gay or trans or whatever, and they're just waiting like this, and they're just waiting for you to have that little slip up so they can attack you. And instead of going, okay, again, find intent. If the intent looks like, if this person, I mean, there's people who talk this and good and goddamn well that they mean the exact opposite. You can read between the lines of some people, but it's the intent. I mean, I mean, I think that's being lost, and you're so right. I think people are just waiting to just chomp on people.
Yeah, I mean, this morning, I put on order the Ford Mustang Mach-E, the electric car, and eventually I'll get it. I don't know. Like it was like last October, and I keep getting emails from Ford that are like, "We're gonna start building it any day now." But I'm in all these Facebook Mach-E forums because I'm now fascinated with it. And there was an article that like Consumer Reports or CNET or someone put out that was about should you get a long range electric vehicle, or should you get what's the right one for you? And standard range. And I got the standard range because I live in LA and we're still, in the middle of a pandemic, but also most often I don't go any further than like 11 miles every day. Standard range is the right thing for me. I don't need to spend as much on the long range because I'm not in Indianapolis. I'm not going to do a road gig that's 300 miles away. That's just the facts of the case. I don't think that that's a thing that people could possibly find a reason to fight about. I could read to you this thread where there's two people, one of whom lives somewhere on the East Coast and another one lives in LA. And thank God it's 3,000 miles and neither of their cars can get to the Mississippi because these motherfuckers would kill each other right now over this, well, your car's going to devalue more if you have standard range, and they're just screaming at each other and like, fuck you, it will not. Just like, all cars devalue. What are you talking about? Like you don't have an investment. You have something that was worth half as much the day you got it, except for in this weird ass time, which is going to change eventually. But if there's an opinion, then there's someone out there who's crazy enough to take it too far.
Yeah, that's so true, man. God damn it. Yeah. Listen, we almost got to go, but before we get out of here, I'm going to ask you one question, but sure. I want people to know the name of the production company is Pygmy Wolf Production. Is that still in?
Yes, sort of. It's Pygmy Wolf was sort of born out of the soup when I started doing when I got my first deal to produce other shows besides the one I was producing. Pygmy Wolf was born, and I wrote it through my time with Lionsgate and through my time with DL, and then when I went to do Blind Date for Bravo is when I sort of like handed off DL to Kevin and his partner Jeff Flanagan and went to New York. That's a way big oversimplification of a very long story, but I went to New York and went back to just being a showrunner for Blind Date. And I sort of assumed I would get back and eventually get it up and running again. But the pandemic has changed a lot. Like the Pygmy Wolf was never like a really big, like super funded company. And the way that production has to be indemnified these days, makes it really hard to have shallow pockets and not be able to. So I'm more in the like, also when I'm show running, I get paid a lot and I have a lot of headaches, but nowhere near as much as when I own the production company that makes the show.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of loving the like, oh man, I'm only worrying about 185 things today.
Good for you.
I did that kind of Hedbergian, didn't I? Oh man, I'm loving only 185 things today. But yeah, so someday it may, if with the right production, with the right idea, with the right thing, it may find its way back. But for right now, it's kind of a thing that I didn't close. But you know, Blind Date, we were supposed to shoot season 2. We did 65 episodes for season 1, and we were supposed to start shooting season 2 in April of 2020, but it became a really bad idea to have strangers dry hump in hot tubs in Atlanta in April of 2020. Like, it was a really fucking bad idea. So,
Yeah, it was.
yeah. So then I spent 9 months sitting on my front step drinking bourbon.
Hey, you do what you gotta do, brother. You said something I think that just resonated with me, and I don't know if it was the motto for your production company, but you said, if standing up will tell you a joke, if sitting down will write you one, if in a network office will sell you a show. God damn, I love that. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
No, I mean that man, I read it and that shit resonated with me harder than I thought it would, but that was beautiful, man. It's prophetic in a way, but that's beautiful. Of all your accolades, and we gotta go. So it's gotta be quick. Of all your accolades that you've done, and it had to be the big ones. Maybe it was your first time on stage, whatever. What's the one that sticks out to you that's gonna be like, man, like you won't forget that one, like that for whatever reason?
I'm listening to you. I'm running right back. It's this one.
What is? Let me see.
Yep. 2014 White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah, Joel McHale was the comic. Myself and Brad Stevens and Boyd Vico, who were in there, were the primary writers on it. And going there, that was actually, if you want to know, like the last evolution of me in getting the confidence to do the stuff that I do, was meeting Barack Obama and not freaking out. Was literally like, we walked up and Joel had pointed us out to him in this long line. The story's way longer than this, but he did much the same thing to Neil Brennan. Like, this is how cool Obama is. Joel had pointed us out as we were waiting in line and as he was taking a picture with him before the actual event. And Brad and Boyd and I walk up, excuse me, and he goes, "Which one of you guys is KP?" And I was like, "Oh, that'd be me, Mr. President." And he says, KP, Michelle, this is KP. He's the guy who runs the soup. He's Joel's guy who runs the soup. And he goes, "Michelle and the girls love the soup. They've been watching it for years. And it's kind of the reason why you guys are here tonight." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And you know, she, like, he goes, "Go talk to her." And he slides her down and he starts talking to Brad and Boyd. And she goes, "We really do. We love the show so much. We like the girls and I every Friday night. We'd sit down and watch, and we just, so many silly spaghetti cat, like referencing little things that we did on the show." And I said, "That's incredibly nice of you to tell me, Mrs. Obama." And I said, "Do you remember a couple months ago you came to the E building to be interviewed by Ryan Seacrest about your health food initiative for kids?" And she goes, "Yeah, I remember that." And I go, "Yeah, I had to park somewhere else that day." And she starts laughing. He overhears it. And he turns and he goes, "Yeah, it's kind of the pain in the ass of us, as we kind of move in wherever we go." And I turned to him and I go, "It's second term arrogance, Mr. President, and I'm not fond." And he literally, like right before that picture, he shoves me back over towards Michelle. And he goes, "All right, you told the joke you thought of in the shower. Let's take the picture." And we take the picture, we laugh, and he goes, "Get out of here. Don't let me see you around here again." And we go walking off. And it was such a just, first of all, it tells you everything, tells me everything about how great he is, like how fast he diffused all the nerves of meeting the president, right?
Yeah.
Like, just like all of a sudden you're just talking to this guy and you're moving on. But I was kind of like, after that moment and that night, we were at, you know, this after party, and I had written this big run of jokes about Chris Christie that Jeff Zucker was at the table next to me, and I'd just done a pilot or just sold a pilot to CNN. So Jeff and I were talking, and then he introduces me to Chris, and I go, I wrote most of the jokes about him. And he goes, Chris, this is KP. He's the guy who wrote most of the jokes. I'm like, shut up, dude. and so we're at this party, and Christie's like bear hugging me and all this stuff. And Joel had told a joke about Robert De Niro that Brad wrote, which was great, which was like, Robert De Niro is here. Let me do my impression of Robert De Niro's agent. Ring, ring, he'll take it. and De Niro's up like pushing Joel, going, you're right, I'm on a money run. It's insane. It's just all this like, it was just such a like moment of like, not like I've arrived, but this moment of like, I'm no longer intimidated by people just because they're more famous than me, or just because they're, you know, here or there. I feel like I can hang in a room all of a sudden, you know? And after that, it was just like, well, I guess I had a moment with the president of the United States where I only sort of made an ass out of myself. And it made me feel like every pitch that I go into, everything else that I do, every meeting that I take, I should be able to handle that moment.
God damn, that's beautiful, man. I mean that from the bottom of my heart, dude. It just makes me go, hey, that is a wow moment, because like I said, man, whenever I think of you, I think of Lake Okoboji. And so it's like, you've done well, my friend. I'm so happy for you. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I'm happy for you. I'm happy to reconnect. I'm just so elated for all your success. And the one thing, and I can't believe I'm saying this, and this maybe just shows our maturity, but the one thing that to me I'm happy about more than anything is just your daughter's well, your kid's well. Honestly, that she's, and I think in Boston, whatever.
Yeah, she's at Northeastern kicking ass.
And that
applied
to me,
physics major. She's applied. She goes, can I tell you one more story real quick? You got time?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, hurry up. Yeah, cool.
Over the holidays, she switched majors from mechanical engineering to applied physics. So she's home in LA, and we go to a friend's house on New Year's Eve, and then we come back home, and I go out back with the dog for a little while, and I come back and I sit down in my chair with my book, and she comes in and she goes, hey Dad, can I talk to you for a second? I said, yeah. And she goes, I want to tell you why I want to switch majors to applied physics. And then she talks to me for 20 minutes about physics. And then she goes, what do you think? And I go, I think it's time I told you that I smoke weed when I go out back with the dog. What? What do you think? Like, I spent 20 minutes looking at a mole on your ear. What are you saying to me? But she's so great. Thank you so much, man. No. I'm so happy to see you and to hear from you and to get caught up, man. I hope our paths can cross again really, really soon. Like, I would love to do anything with you, brother. It is so much fun to hang and talk again.
No, I mean it from the bottom. I mean, if ever Wayne Brady goes on a 5-state killing spree and he do his show, I'll play his part. I'll be the young Brady.
Let's meet up in Lake Okoboji and go hit baseballs again. Let's go hit. I remember that. I remember going to the batting cage with you and going like, I'm good at baseball. I'm going to try to hit the ball farther than this buff black dude. Like, that's what I'm going to do today, is I'm going to show this motherfucker that I can knock it out of the park here too.
As long as you don't sack me. As long as you don't sack me, brother.
Exactly. Look, I hit hard, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Ladies and gentlemen, KP Anderson, great friend, great everything, and he's killing it in Hollywood, and he's always been my friend. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you, KP. And you know how I say about this time at the end of the show, you know the word, peace.